Today I'm reviewing the Fujifilm X-A10 mirrorless camera. The X-A10, being Fuji's least expensive mirrorless, has an all-plastic body with this cool-looking retro design to it. The black textured plastic strip running through the center adds both retro appeal and improves the grip on the camera. And I really appreciated having that textured surface since the grip on the X-A10 isn't very deep. Despite this, it's still a comfortable camera to hold and use, and I never really felt it would slip from my hand at any point. What I'm not a big fan of is the bulkiness of the stock 16 to 50mm lens when compared to the body. This makes it a bit front heavy and unbalanced, especially when the lens is zoomed in. It doesn't really affect the usability much, it's just something to get used to. Since the X-A10 is built with Fuji's X mount, you can always fix this by swapping it out with a compact prime lens. I'll leave links to some options right below this video in case you're looking to buy one. More about the performance of the kit lens in a minute. Also, rather surprisingly, despite the all-plastic body and lens, it weighs in at almost 100 grams heavier than the metal-bodied Canon EOS M100 and 125 grams heavier than the Sony A5100, with all cameras mounted to their kit lenses. That's quite a difference for folks looking for a compact camera to travel with. Behind the lens is a 16 megapixel APS-C size sensor like you'd find on any entry-level DSLR. Now, most DSLRs and mirrorless cameras seem to be shooting images as large as 18 megapixels. So the Fuji starts off with a bit of a disadvantage here. In fact, both its biggest competitors, the Sony A5100 and the Canon EOS M100, both shoot images as large as 24 megapixels. However, megapixels aren't usually everything, so we'll see how its pictures actually look in a minute. I really like how all the Fuji's buttons and dials are laid out, especially on top where you have a nice knurled mode dial, an on-off switch with the shutter button, an adjuster dial, and a programmable function button. There's also another adjuster dial on the top edge, which you can use to do things like zoom into the photos you've already taken. All the buttons on the rear face are also pretty well laid out, with the only curious exception being the movie record button. I would have also preferred this button be a little less recessed, so it's easier to hit record when you need to. The tilting screen is probably the X-A10's strongest feature. It tilts, pulls out, and extends, allowing you to take pictures of objects higher than you and lower than you, like this shot. It also flips over and extends so you can use the camera for vlogging and selfies. More about the vlogging in a minute. The screen performs decently and is good enough to use outdoors. It's definitely not as good as the screen on the Canon EOS M100, but definitely usable. The menus are a bit confusing and cluttered, and since it isn't a touchscreen, you're dependent on the buttons to navigate through it. There's also a pop-up flash built into the top face in case you need it. Unlike its two biggest competitors, the X-A10's SD card slots into a compartment on the bottom with the battery instead of an easy access slot on the side. Another disappointing thing is how the battery is charged. Fuji only provides a USB cable with a power brick and doesn't provide a standalone battery charger. In case you buy this camera, I recommend getting a standalone charger like this one, so you can pop out your battery and replace it with a spare while your depleted battery charges up. I'll leave a link to one below in case you're looking to buy one. Right next to the charging port on the camera is a micro HDMI port in case you need to connect the camera to a TV or monitor. The camera also has a quarter 20 thread in case you need to mount it to a tripod. One thing that's missing though is a hot shoe mount. However, most people starting out in the world of photography won't really need or miss this feature. As I mentioned earlier, the X-A10 takes pictures as large as 16 megapixels and stores them in the JPEG format. It can also store the images as a RAW file, and as with most cameras these days, it can also store it as both a JPEG and RAW for each image. For some strange reason though, in the fully automatic mode, it doesn't trust you enough to store the images as RAW files, so you're limited to using just JPEGs, and this is a bit annoying to be honest, especially if you're a beginner and plan on learning to edit your RAW images. The pictures the camera takes are actually pretty impressive. I've always felt Canon cameras had the best color reproduction, and I have to say the Fuji seems to perform just as well as any Canon mirrorless or DSLR when it comes to color reproduction. The pictures have a really pleasing natural aesthetic to them. And though the kit lens isn't the best lens out there, it's pretty sharp and doesn't disappoint either. As you can tell from these shots, the pictures were pretty well exposed and reasonably sharp. Now, most people looking to buy the X-A10 will probably be moving from a smartphone or point and shoot. I just wanted to see how it would perform against my iPhone 7, and as you can see from the pictures, the images from the X-A10 were better exposed and had more pleasing colors, captured detail more accurately, and had a nice soft background to them. Even the camera's low light shots were pretty impressive, produced pretty decent images with very little noise, even with the flash turned off, as you can see from these pictures that were taken in the dark. When it came to video though, the Fuji wasn't very impressive. The 1080p video at both 24 and 30 FPS was pretty mediocre. The images were kind of muddy and lacked the sharpness and dynamic range of video from its major competitors. And even with a bit of color correction and sharpening, the video really didn't improve very much, as you can see here. Pretty uninspiring video quality.
So in case you're wondering how this performs as a vlogging camera, the video you're seeing right now is from the X-A10. I have the screen flipped up so I can actually see myself, and it seems to be tracking me pretty well. And the audio you're hearing right now is being recorded directly into the X-A10, into the built-in microphone on the X-A10, and this is very important because it doesn't have an external microphone jack, so the only audio you're going to get is the built-in audio, and it's very important that it sounds good. I also have it set up at the 1080p at 24 FPS. You can always switch to the 30 FPS mode in case you want slightly smoother video. However, unlike its competitors like the Canon EOS M100, it doesn't shoot 1080p at 60 FPS for that super smooth video. And I really do miss that feature. I really wish they had 1080p at 60 FPS. 1080p at 60 FPS is really helpful for vlogs, as that video is nice and smooth and you can move around with it.
So should you get the Fuji X-A10? Well, it all depends on what you plan to use it for and how much of a discount you can buy it for. If you plan to use it only for photos and not for video, and you can buy it at a substantial discount, the X-A10 is a pretty good deal. But if you plan to take both photos and videos, I really can't recommend it. If you're on a budget, I recommend getting the Sony A5100, and if you're willing to put in a bit more money, I recommend investing in the Canon EOS M100. You'll have a much better experience with either of these cameras. I'll leave a link to all three of these cameras below in case you're looking to buy one. Do you own a Fuji X-A10? If so, tell me about your experience in the comments below. Hope this video has been useful. If it has, please hit that like button and subscribe for more reviews, unboxings, and how-to videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.